As a defender, he should be doing far better. He should be doing far better at Liverpool, and I think a lot of the challenges that Liverpool are having at this moment in time are defensively. They're all over the place, and he's part of that. Welcome to this week's edition of One to One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing, and equally as importantly, to keep leaving those brilliant questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with this week's show. Depends if people need to be proven right. I don't think Gareth Southgate is attempting to be proved right about whether Trent Alexander-Arnold is a good defender or not. I think he's trying to pick the best team to be able to overcome the obstacles that England have. And one of those obstacles is the media and their focus now on Southgate. That includes all of us in terms of sort of deriding him before a World Cup. Of course, if you go into a World Cup on the back of some very poor form in a kind of pseudo-meaningless tournament, albeit you get relegated from it, you don't really want to play in groups that you don't have to. But I don't think anyone has laboured under the illusion that he's the greatest defender, and what they're trying to do is balance it off with the attributes that he has going forward. I think if he's a defender, one of his core propositions should be the ability to defend. Jurgen Klopp suggests that he is a good defender that doesn't defend good at times, and that's perhaps a potentially good analogy, but if those times that you don't defend good cost your team goals, then what use is it as a defender? I don't think Gareth's been proven right. I think he sets up in a cautious fashion. And so with that in mind, if caution is the watchword for Gareth Southgate, which by the way we shouldn't want, because there's going to be times we need to go and put teams to the sword, and maybe offensively going forward we'll have questions asked that Trent Alexander-Arnold could answer. But I think that as a defender, he should be doing far better. He should be doing far better at Liverpool, and I think a lot of the challenges that Liverpool are having at this moment in time are defensively. They're all over the place, and he's part of that. So if we want to say, for whatever purpose, that Gareth Southgate has been proven to be right by not selecting one player or potentially patronising him because he worries about his defensive capabilities, and I guess yes, Gareth Southgate's been proven right. Is Cristiano Ronaldo the greatest of all time? It's one of those ridiculous arguments that is a circle you can never square. I don't know, Pelé scored 1,000 goals, and people will say he scored them in Brazil. You look at Johan Cruyff and some of the things that he brought to the game. You look at a whole raft of the greatest players, from Puskas up to where we are today in modern day football, including, of course, Maradona, that carried Argentina to a World Cup, that took Napoli, an unfashionable Napoli in Naples, to winning Serie A. So you can look at these things, and we are guilty of condensing into moments of time. Of course, this is an incredibly long moment of time for Ronaldo, because over 20 years he has been prolific. If you look at the statistics, Erling Haaland's going to have to score 43 goals a season to even get anywhere near, over the next 16 seasons, to get anywhere near what Ronaldo has achieved. And he's done it arguably some of the biggest clubs, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juve. I am in the camp, and this is going to perhaps put the cat amongst the pigeons, that George Best at one particular time was the greatest player we've ever seen. Playing in a time when defenders could do what they did or attempted to do to him. Pitches could do what they didn't do now, which is add a surface that was vaguely resembling a football pitch that you can play beautiful football on, yet he played beautiful football. So I look down the barrel of saying that my greatest of all time would be George Best for a 4-year period. But I guess if you're going to extrapolate it up over a career, it's difficult to argue past Ronaldo. It's difficult to argue past his achievements, because he's played all over Europe. He's played in different leagues and achieved in everywhere. Whereas Pelé and Eusebio and Johan Cruyff, who was a bit more varied, tend to have done it in one particular league, albeit they got to World Cup finals and won World Cups. So for the purpose of this argument, we'll give it a yes for Ronaldo, albeit a qualified one. The European Super League is an inevitability. It always was an inevitability, and we have to be clear what it was and what it is that we're objecting to. We objected to the idea, not the narrative that was painted by certain sections of the media, but the real bottom line distilled situation, which was this was a league that had no meritocracy. There was a closed shop. in went the gang, the well-heeled gang of established blue chip football clubs, and the door was closed behind them. Now, that was the fundamental aspect that we were unhappy with, that it was painted up into different things. Now, you take away that problem and you build it as a merit-based league, and you drive it properly, and there's contributions back to the various pyramids of the countries where the teams competed from. So if there's going to be huge benefits for the people that play in that tournament, there's a redistribution mechanism that drops into parts of the Premier League and of course down into the EFL. Where's the problem with that? You've got a Champions League which is made up of 90% of the teams which aren't champions. That is also building in coefficients so that teams that have historically done well in this tournament can actually qualify for the Champions League without merit. You can ultimately see the league expanding, so there's more teams being put into it, more games. So why are UEFA suddenly the harbingers of all good things in football? Nonsense, claptrap, load of old pony. The presentation of this was wrong, but it will come again, and the reasons why it will come again, and people keep talking about greed and avarice. Well, what drives greed? I suspect the opportunity. If you're going to invest money into a football club, you want a return. You don't want the return to simply be players, agents, managers, because right now what's driving football and its economies and its economics is the inability to stop player wages. So if we are quite happy with being able to suppress player wages and cap player wages and bring football clubs into a sustainable position, then there's an argument to say we don't need to keep evolving, but everything keeps on evolving. So yes, of course, the European Super League is going to come again. I don't think Wolves look like they're going down at all. Obviously, if you get beat 3-0 by Chelsea, a Chelsea side littered with talent, just because they've had a few peaks and troughs recently. Chelsea, don't be under the illusion that they're not a good side and won't be challenging for the top 3 spots in this division. So getting beat 3 by Chelsea is no indication of Wolverhampton Wanderers' ongoing form. They're a good side. Okay, myself and Graham Sinners talked last week about our surprise about Bruno Lage and the fact that the team was going okay, just couldn't score enough goals, and that of course comes down to the constant selling of their best centre forwards or the injuries of others. And then we were corrected by Wolves fans saying, no, this dressing room and this club have been a little bit out of kilter. I don't think Wolverhampton Wanderers are going down. I think they're in a difficult moment, and if they take one Lupatapi, or if they build in another manager, it will change the direction. Whether that's Sean, who I think is worthy of a good Premier League job, is a different question. But I push back against the characterisation of the question. I think they're going to have some difficult times, but I think they're too good a side. I know we've said that before, but I think they are too balanced a side, and maybe Costa will get them some goals, and maybe Wolves will just get themselves together a little bit better. But I don't think you can turn around and say, because they've lost a few games this season and they've been marginal in those games, that we should be automatically writing their obituary and sending them back to the Championship. I think everything, listen, contact sports and the evolution of them, if the contact sport directs people into dementia and to CET and to concussion and to life-changing illnesses, then that can't be routinely and systematically ignored. We have to look after athletes and young children and how they develop into being sports people. We have to use the technology, we have to evolve the medical resources that we have. It's not good enough for it to be jumpers for goalposts, for federations to sit there with their heads buried in the sand and to ignore medical or clinical opportunities to evaluate prevention. Prevention could be a variety of things. It can be brain scans, it can be some form of protective headgear, it can be some form of reduction of impact during training, but we can't systematically just ignore it. Otherwise we will begin to see, for want of a better expression, the death knell of some of these sports. Curiously, it's almost unbelievable that the most contact-orientated sport, I suspect in the mainstream, boxing, seems to evade some of these challenges and questions. And even more so when we've seen the most disgraceful of circumstances this week, where failed drug tests seem to be of little concern to major parts of the sport, whether it's the promoters or the boxing board of control, that seem to have only actually been motivated by newspaper reports leaking such things that could lead to a particular fighter being seriously damaged. So unless we adapt and evolve and use all of the advances, every aspect of them, then there is going to be some jeopardy, there is going to be some compromise. I'm not suggesting we live in a nanny state and stop people from getting involved with contact sports, but we do have to look at the findings and the evolution of technology to avoid the necessity to routinely dismantle sports and make them not fit for purpose anymore. Right, that's it for this week's edition of One to One with Simon Jordan. Don't forget to let me know your views on Trent Alexander-Arnold, Cristiano Ronaldo, and of course the never-ending European Super League. Keep liking and subscribing, and most importantly, leaving those brilliant questions in the comment section below. And I look forward to seeing you next week.